Hi everyone, welcome to the Icehouse webinar. I'm Briar Stewart, the Community Manager at the Icehouse, and today we have a great webinar in conjunction with our awesome partners at Xero. So thank you guys. We have Luke Smith, the Director of Operations for New Zealand. Hey Luke. And we've got Chris Barton, who looks after the financial partnerships in New Zealand for Xero. So welcome, thank you for being here, appreciate it. So to sum it up, today we're talking about getting paid faster, which I'm sure is a subject that many of you are keen to tune into and listen about how you can get paid faster. Summing it up, cash flow is the lifeblood of any small business in New Zealand. And Xero's research also shows that it's one of the top pain points along with time. There are some key steps small businesses can take to help improve their cash flow and ensure they receive money they are owed on time. In this webinar, we're going to give you some really useful Xero tips to help you get paid faster. You'll learn how you can make use of online invoices and payment services, and we'll also cover the benefits of e-invoicing and what you need to do to prepare your business to use this service. So thank you, Luke and Chris. Really appreciate you guys being here and your time, and looking forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Kia ora, Brian, and kia ora koutou, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is, as you said, all about improving cash flow for small business. By the end of today's session, you'll hopefully know enough to get paid almost twice as fast as you do now, and you can do that simply by using digital invoicing and online payment services. And we're going to show you some research to back that bold claim up, and we're going to show you how easy it is to get started. So look, Luke and I both work at Xero, so the majority of the session is related to Xero's invoicing features and our payment partners, but we're going to cover some basic concepts around how e-invoicing and online payment services work in general. And we're also going to try and demystify some of this awesome technology so that you guys out there feel confident enough to get online and try it out yourself. Righto, so in terms of today's agenda, I'm going to hand over to Luke shortly, and he's going to share some research with you on how long it actually takes the average business in New Zealand to get paid, and how by simply changing to online invoicing, you can reduce the time it takes to get paid and also chase up late payments. Luke's also going to talk about the introduction of e-invoicing to New Zealand and the benefits that bring. So once we've got the basics of digital invoicing down, I'm going to spend the rest of the webinar talking about how to attach a payment service to a Xero invoice, and I'll cover off some of the key features of our payment partners, Stripe and Gocardless. It's always a bit hard in these forums to gauge the level of understanding in the audience, particularly some of the terminology around payments, so we've kept it pretty simple. Before I hand over to Luke, I thought I'd ask the audience maybe a strange question, but who or what do you think is older? Is it my baby-faced colleague Luke here, or is it New Zealand's EFTPOS system? Any guesses? Well, the answer is neither or either. They were both born in the year of 1989, and unlike Luke, EFTPOS was born in a service station, but 30 years on, we're still using similar technology today to get paid, and I'll touch a bit more on that later. Over to you, Luke.
Thanks, Chris. Some shots fired there early on. I was born in Gore, so maybe not too dissimilar. Hey, thanks everyone. It's great to be here. I'm just going to start off by talking about some of the payments data that we're seeing within Xero. So every month at Xero, we release what's called the Small Business Insights data, which is aggregated and anonymized data of businesses that use Xero, so hundreds of thousands of businesses. And then we look at some of the key statistics of what we're seeing trends in small business. And one of those is that we measure is the average time it takes to pay an invoice in New Zealand. So you can see that over there, that 24 days it takes on average for an invoice to be paid in New Zealand, and that's hot off the press from October. Now this year, obviously with COVID, there's been a lot of pressure on all businesses, and we've actually seen that impact payment time. So before we went into COVID, it took on average 26 days for a business to receive payment. And then during the April lockdown in New Zealand, it went from 26 days to a peak of 31 days. So you've got this impact on businesses of not being able to trade, sending out less invoices because the country's in lockdown. But then that's also compounded by the fact that any work they are asking payment for is being paid later. And this all has a flow-on effect to cash flow. So it can become a vicious cycle. Fortunately, since then, we've seen that recovery of the payment time to 24 days in October. But what we don't see behind that statistic is that on average, businesses are still about 9 days late on the requested payment time. And so again, that's having a big impact on cash flow for small businesses. And you can see here that 50% of Xero small businesses in New Zealand are cash flow negative in any month. So today we're going to show you how you utilize features like online invoicing, things like invoice reminders, invoice payment services to help you get paid faster. So one of the things, along with everything that a small business has to cope with, is finding enough time to manage all the paperwork in their business. And one of the first casualties is invoicing and chasing up for payment, which for a small business is like cutting off the bloodline. So for some of you, it might be a no-brainer, and we're possibly preaching to the converted, but online invoicing has a lot of advantages over paper or PDF invoices that aren't linked to your accounting software. I just want to start with a bit of a personal experience. So last year I bought my first home. I'm not the most practical person. I'm an office worker, so I had to recruit a crew of floor layers and electricians and roofers and landscapers to help me get this place in order. But it was interesting dealing with different businesses and the varying ways that I received a quote, an invoice for the work, and the way that we communicated. And the ones that didn't have an online system, it definitely took a lot longer for them to get round to actually asking me for money. And the whole experience just felt a bit clunky. So rather than, just email threads and waiting for things to come through. One particular job that had been done, it took about 4 weeks for an invoice to actually come through. So it nearly got to the point where I thought, sheesh, I should actually email or call this person because I think they've forgotten to ask me for my money. But on the other hand, those businesses that had a website, I received a quote online, had kind of line by line estimates of the job that we had just discussed on the phone. And then that quote was easily converted into an invoice. Once the job was done, I could pay it online. It was just a really slick experience and it felt good to deal with them. And then on the flip side, they got their money quicker. So I think it's, the benefits of online invoicing are really obvious, but just in particular, I think that concept it saves a lot of time. So one example in Xero, if you're a business that has customers on a regular billing plan, like a cleaning service or an accounting firm, you can use a repeating invoice template. So rather than recreating an invoice for the same customer, you can have a template that pops up, you can review and approve it and send it, or Xero can automatically send it on your behalf. And then the really big one is spending less time or having less awkward conversations around chasing payment for work you've done. So the debt collection side of invoicing. Because an online invoice is stored online, it means that you yourself, your team, and your customer can actually view the invoice. You can see whether a customer has viewed it. You can see whether they've paid it or whether it's outstanding. You can produce a report. This is just using Xero as an example, but produce a report of all of the contact details against a list of invoices that are still to be paid. So your aged receivables. But one of the hot tips today, one of the best features I think in Xero invoicing is the ability to send up friendly automatic email reminders for invoices that haven't been paid. And you can customize how you want to do that. So you can send an email tell Xero to send an email 2 days prior to it being due. Hey, just a reminder that it's going, in 2 days the payment is due. You can set one up at a week over outstanding, 2 weeks outstanding, and you can customize the message that you want Xero to automatically send to do that chasing for you. And then obviously also getting paid faster online, and Chris is going to explain that one shortly. I'll just shift gears and quickly cover e-invoicing. So we are accounting software at Xero. So when we get excited about things, take it with a grain of salt. But we actually are excited about this new development that's emerging in New Zealand that really changes the landscape of business to business invoicing and the way that businesses trade with each other. So e-invoicing is really being driven by the New Zealand government here, which wants to help New Zealand businesses become digitally enabled in the way that we transact with each other, and so that we're more efficient, automated, and standardized. And this includes providing capability and access to core innovations such as e-invoicing. So what is it? Well, it is not online invoicing in the form that we use today. So I'll just quickly explain that by showing the two side by side. So currently we send a PDF file or an online invoice via email, and the recipient will receive that invoice via email and then needs to pay it and then enter it into their own accounting system. An e-invoice, on the other hand, is automatically sent from the seller's accounting system straight through to the buyer's accounting system via a secure e-invoicing network. So there's no need for the business that's receiving the invoice and needs to pay it to populate the details, double enter things that are already available on the document that you've set. Just comparing the cost savings that between these methods, the Ministry of Business Innovation and Employment in New Zealand has done the math, and they've shown that on average a paper invoice costs about $25.60 to process, an online invoice about $23, and an e-invoice $7.60. So you think of the productivity, if all businesses are using this, that can generate in New Zealand. The way e-invoicing works is that even if the two accounting systems are different, so you've got Xero here and a different accounting system here, because there's an international framework which uses a common standard, it allows these systems to speak to each other, kind of like emailing today. And the global framework chosen by Australia and New Zealand to roll this out is called PEPAL. It's a proven framework that's operated for over 10 years. It's used in 34 countries, and it really just provides the standards and the technical specifications that are required for the digital exchange of documents. Quite an important one on e-invoicing, if you're getting curious about how this works. The way that the network identifies unique senders and recipients is via a New Zealand business number. So you can't participate in e-invoicing without a unique New Zealand business number. That number acts as the unique email address for e-invoicing on the PEPAL network. And I think the fact that you need an NZBN really clarifies the scope of e-invoicing, and that's that it is between businesses. So an example of that would be Genesis or Contact sending a utility bill to a small business. My friend owns and runs the general store on the Coromandel at Hahei. So he's dealing with suppliers, other businesses all the time. So he's receiving invoices on a daily basis. So e-invoicing is going to be really beneficial for his, cutting down on his administration. So that's e-invoicing. I don't want to do a demo of it today, but the reason we're talking about it is it's just another motivator. If you are not already using online invoicing from an accounting software, to get set up so that you're ready for this new way of working as adoption grows in New Zealand. If you already are on Xero and you're thinking, actually, I want to get started and ready with this, there are some things that you can do. So the first one is make sure that you have a New Zealand business number and that you have it loaded in Xero. So that's the way that Xero will validate that you can send an e-invoice. You also need your GST number or your IRD number in Xero. There's some prompts that will tell you what you need when you try to send an e-invoice. And then the other thing is you also need your customer's unique New Zealand business number as the address, which gives the instructions for Xero of where to send that e-invoice. That kind of flows on to this concept of we need businesses to share their New Zealand business number with each other. So some tips for that, put your New Zealand business number in your letterhead, the bottom of your invoices, your email signature, things like that just allow people to start sharing that unique address. And then finally, we've made e-invoicing available in our new invoicing feature in Xero. So if you're in Xero invoicing on a desktop screen, you just scroll down to the bottom of the invoicing screen page and click switch to new invoicing at the bottom of the invoice screen, and you'll be able to see that you have the option there to send us an e-invoice. Back to you, Chris.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Luke. And hey, look, one of the things I really like about e-invoicing is that it's actually a really good defense against invoice fraud. But yeah, make sure that you all update your NZBN number within Xero to make that happen. So look, I'm going to talk about online invoice payments now. And what I'm talking about is how you can actually attach a payment service to your invoice. And really what we're talking about here is just simply adding a Pay Now button to your Xero invoice. And you can see that here on your screen. So what that means is your customers can pay their invoice straight away by simply clicking the Pay Now button, and that will then take them through to what we call a secure online checkout, hosted by one of our payment partners. And from your customer's point of view, it really is exactly the same thing as making an online purchase with a credit card or setting up a direct debit with, say, a utility provider online. Look, if your customers aren't comfortable with either of those options, they can still log into their online banking and pay your invoice by normal bank transfer, just like they probably do now. So look, to start accepting online invoice payments, you will need to set up an account with a Xero payment partner. And today we're going to focus on our two best-in-class payment partners, Stripe and Gocardless. So one of the reasons that Stripe and Gocardless are best-in-class is because we've hardwired them directly into the Xero app itself. So you can get set up and start receiving payments literally within minutes. So as we've demonstrated here, the easiest way to add a payment service is actually just to create a new invoice within Xero. It's really that easy. There's a really easy to find online payments menu at the top of the invoice, and you just need to follow the prompts to either create a new account with Stripe or Gocardless, or if you already have an account, you can easily link that account to your invoice just by following those prompts. Everything's completed in the cloud. There's no paper forms involved, and everything is super clear and intuitive. So that's how to set up a payment service. But before I get into the detail of each of these providers, I just thought, what does using a payment service actually look like in practice? So I thought I'd give you a quick overview of the whole process from start to finish. So firstly, like I just showed you, Xero users need to set up their account with a payment partner, either using the invoicing screen or via the payment settings menu from within Xero. When you create an invoice, you can actually select up to 3 payment options to offer your customers. And then once you've sent on that invoice to your customers and they've received the invoice, they can then choose which payment method they want to use by clicking on that Pay Now button, and they'll be redirected to that secure checkout. So once a payment is made, the provider will deposit those funds into your bank account minus their standard fees. Funds are normally available within 2 to 4 business days, depending on the type of provider that you are using. And lastly, the Xero piece of the puzzle, your invoice, is actually marked as paid, and it's matched to your Xero bank feed for easy reconciliation. Now, there's a bunch of reasons why we think businesses should use online invoice payments. But the main one is that on average, a business gets paid 11 days faster if they use Stripe or Gocardless. And that's almost twice as fast as a business who doesn't use a payment service. Now, 11 days is a long time in a small business's cash flow cycle. It could be the difference between making payroll or rent or paying tax on time. And actually, from a hashtag human perspective, it actually just reduces a huge amount of stress. So here's a tip for getting paid faster, and that's to offer your customers as many different payment options as possible. Offering a pay now option along with the traditional bank transfer is actually all part of your customer experience journey. Some customers like credit cards because they're faster than pushing through a bank transfer. They can generate loyalty points or they can access credit. Other customers prefer direct debit because they can set up and forget their payment, a bit like an Uber ride or an electricity bill. Or maybe they've got a whole lot of funds locked up in a PayPal account that they want to use. So it's all about giving your customers choice. Another really important consideration is being mobile friendly. So a pay now button on an invoice can be accessed via anyone's mobile, and it's a great solution. It's even better if they've got Apple Pay or Google Pay enabled, so your customers can be done and dusted in a couple of swipes or clicks. In terms of security, the benefits are often overlooked for online payments because one of the most common forms of fraud is invoice fraud and the manipulation of bank account details. So by using these services, you're effectively sidestepping that risk and reducing that risk of fraud. And in the same breath, all of our payment partners that sit on our marketplace, they all meet globally accepted standards for fraud prevention. Okay, let's talk about Stripe. Now, most people in New Zealand know what EFTPOS is. Luke certainly does now. But to use that as an example, using Stripe is basically like having an online EFTPOS machine attached to your Xero invoice. Stripe themselves, they're a massive global payment provider, and they specialize in providing online credit and debit card payment services. And they're one of the world's largest and most trusted providers in this space. Millions of businesses, ranging from startups to Fortune 500 companies, use this company's software to accept online payments. So if you buy goods or services online, it's pretty likely that your favorite website will be using Stripe to process that payment. So I'll quickly run through some key features, and I'll start from the right to the left. One of the most loved features of Stripe is that it has its own bank feed in Xero. And so what this means is if you sell goods on your website using Stripe and you also receive payments from your Xero invoices using Stripe, you can capture all of these transactions in a single bank feed within Xero. And so you can monitor and reconcile all of your online and offline sales. Luke mentioned it earlier, Xero's got a recurring invoice feature, and you can add Stripe to this, which becomes an ideal solution for customers who are on a payment plan or on a monthly subscription, and they can happily authorize you to debit their credit or debit card when their monthly invoice is due. Stripe does charge a fee. It's 30 cents per transaction plus 2.9% of the payment amount. However, you can use their surcharging feature to pass this cost on to the purchaser. Payouts take 4 working days, and this might seem like a long time, but it's actually been designed to help protect business customers from fraud and actually the potential impact of a payment that might need to be refunded. Finally, one of the latest features that Stripe have introduced, and it's really exciting, is that they can now accept payments from Alipay account holders. And this is really awesome because Alipay are literally the biggest mobile payments company in the world. They've got nearly 1 billion users, which is really hard to believe. And when you combine that with Apple Pay and Google Pay, Stripe really owns the mobile payment space. Okay, so while Stripe have everything wrapped up from a card perspective, Gocardless are another global payment provider, and they specialize in direct debit payments from bank accounts. Now, direct debit is a pretty underutilized payment option. It's designed for recurring payments, and historically it's been used by gyms or large utility companies. And one of the reasons that small businesses haven't used it more widely in the past is that actually arranging a direct debit facility with a bank can be pretty challenging from a credit perspective. And there's usually lots of paperwork involved in arranging a facility, and there's often quite a bit of paperwork in getting your customers set up onto those direct debits. Now here's the thing, Gocardless have digitized that whole process so that you can easily invite your customers to pay by direct debit, and it's all done in the cloud. The payments themselves, they're super easy to manage. You can easily change the date and the amount of the future payments online, or you can turn them off completely. And to sign up to Gocardless, you don't need to be a certain size, you don't need to provide security, and that really opens it up to a number of small businesses. And look, it's a really good solution for service businesses, a whole range of businesses really. Anyone that's got a regular returning customer base, but in particular, it's great for accountants and advisors. It's great for medical practitioners, cleaners, gardeners, etc. You get the picture. So here's a quick summary of the key features of Gocardless. They do have an international reach and quite a big reach. So you can set up direct debit with customers in over 30 countries in 8 different currencies. And that includes Europe, the US, Canada, and Australia, all from your existing New Zealand bank account. They also offer this quite cool installment payment option. And this is really ideal for customers who want to pay off, say, an annual invoice or a large one-off bill over a set period of time. Reconciliation, it's really straightforward. The invoice is paid exactly on the due date. It's for the correct amount, and that matches automatically in your Gocardless bank feed within Xero. In terms of fees, their standard pricing is 40 cents plus 1% of each transaction, but all transactions are capped at $4. So you'll never pay more than $4 per transaction, and payouts take about 4 to 5 days to hit your bank account. So look, that's a fairly quick overview of Stripe and Gocardless. Before I move on to some of our questions, I just wanted to touch on a couple of other partners that sit in our app marketplace who do slightly different things. Providers like eWay, PayStation, and Payment Express, they're now called Wincave. They're all really good options if you need a payment gateway service. And what this means is if you already have an e-commerce or an FBOS facility with your bank, you can use these providers to connect up that facility as a payment option on your Xero invoice. For something a little bit different, Zip Payments are one of our newest payment partners, and they offer a fully integrated buy now, pay later service. So great for customers that want to pay off those purchases over a longer period of time. And also Poly, they're pretty well known in New Zealand. They also integrate to Xero, and they provide a solution where customers can pay an invoice directly from their bank account. So definitely check out Xero's app marketplace to check out some of these options. Okay, so if you want to find out more about what we've talked about today, there is literally loads of information on our website and on our online help desk, Xero Central. And just to wrap things up, what we've covered today really does come down to one thing, simply do you want to get paid faster, and what business doesn't? But if you do, I'd suggest that you do give online payment services a go, or at the very least, start using digital invoicing or e-invoicing. It's just so easy to jump into Xero, create an invoice, and follow the prompts to set up either a Stripe or a Gocardless account. It will only take you maximum 5 minutes. It won't cost you anything to set up, and you can try it out and see what you think. So thanks for listening, everyone. I'll now pass back to Brian to see if we've had any questions from the Icehouse alumni.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Chris and Luke. That was great. E-invoicing, a game changer. That was really cool to hear about that, and also some great examples that you guys said. So no doubt in my mind, this will be very valuable to our alumni. With that,
as excited about that as us, bro.
Yeah, no, seriously, I actually am, because I've sort of like, this is a game changer. It's so good being able to just like pay now as well. That sort of feature is very cool. So thanks guys, appreciate it. Before this webinar, we went out to our community platform, Icehouse Central, and we asked some of our alumni some questions, as well as just chatting to our sort of sales and growth team about what are some key questions. So a couple that we've got time for today, I will start off with this one, which is sort of a couple questions in one, but I get paid by invoice only. Are there any common mistakes that delay payment? And then in the same vein, if I put please ensure payment within 28 days, do debitors actually work to this kind of request? Any thoughts there, guys?
Yeah, I can have a crack at that one, Chris. I think firstly, just make sure that your invoice looks professional and contains all of your contact information, and that your bank account is just really clearly visible and can be copied to paste into an online banking app or your accounting software. So actually give your own invoice that you're sending a test and pretend like you are a customer receiving and wanting to pay it. Make sure that you're clearly explaining your services or goods before the invoice goes. So, I mentioned it in the story of the help I was getting renovating the house, is we had discussed the plan of attack, and then I got a quote that actually listed out the different items and services that we had discussed on the phone. And so when it came to getting an invoice, it was just really easy and clear what I was paying for. And then set a due date that's in a realistic time frame. So we're in this, for some reason, we're kind of in this habit of sending invoices that are due at the end of the month, or 28 days away. Bring that forward to something like 7 or 14 days. That's becoming much more common. And then lastly, like Chris mentioned, definitely look at that pay now option that just reduces errors and make sure that you're paid. It's really convenient for the customer when they can get it and they can pay it straight away, and it's out of mind.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. I loved how you said the example about, you buying your first home and, all the little reno things to get that up to scratch, and just the difference between someone with an online system and someone without, that you're actually nearly picking up the phone and going, hey, should I pay you? Which kind of just highlights the difference, which is quite cool. So thanks. Next question is, I've got 1 or 2 clients who always, in caps actually, always pay late and need chasing. How can I make them faster?
Yeah, well, that's a pretty common situation. Yeah, I'll jump in there. Look, it's also a bit of a tricky one, to be honest. I mean, on one hand, your clients, they could be super busy. They might have a lot on. They might just be forgetful, and they just need a bit of prompting. Or on the other side of the coin, they might be having some cash flow problems. So you might need to be a bit more diplomatic in that scenario. But in the first scenario, one of the first things I'd do would be, let the computer do the work, turn on invoice reminders, and actually activate those reminders before payment is due, and then after payment is due, if that's still an issue. Look, if they're like me and they're time poor and slightly lazy, they might actually prefer it if you set them up on a direct debit facility, or use Stripe's auto pay function, so they can sort of set and forget that obligation to go into their online banking and make a payment. If they are having cash flow timing issues, it becomes a bit more delicate, and maybe they can use some of the techniques that we've talked about today to get paid faster from their own clients. And then what we haven't talked about today is the fact that Xero does have partnerships with invoice finance providers if they need funding. So just another thing to think about.
Wow. Yeah, that's good to know. That's great. Cool. Another question, and is a lot of my customers have to pay me an upfront fee before we work together. Can we make this faster? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, you can definitely do this. The best thing to do is attach different payments to the invoice, but at the moment in Xero, it needs to be an invoice that's set up separately for an upfront fee or a deposit on work. So it's something that partial payment functionality is the term that we use at Xero, and it's something that we're looking. So definitely watch this space.
Awesome.
What I would say is typically we hear this question of how do I set up a deposit on a total invoice or a partial payment from businesses that are a lot of the time jobs based. So it may be in construction, it could be, consulting job, even manufacturing. And so what we'd typically say is, there are project time and cost tracking tools or apps that integrate into Xero invoicing. Things like Tradeify, Workflow Max. Xero Projects actually sits within Xero. So with Xero Projects, using that as an example, you set up the structure of your job as a quote. The customer accepts the quote. And then from Xero Projects, you can set up invoices that are partial payments. So I want to do a fixed amount or a percentage of the total job, let's say 10% as a deposit. And it's sending it out as individual invoices. So that's Xero Projects or some similar project or job costing tool that integrates with Xero is a good way to go.
Awesome, great. So many great integrations with Xero, which is another great feature of it all being online, which is cool. Last question is, I offer 2% discounts for fast payers. Can I do this online?
Good question, Briar. I'll tackle this one. So look, let me talk about prompt payment discounting first, because it can be a bit polarizing. Some people argue that you should just shorten your payment terms without a discount, and there's pretty good reason behind that, because actually when you annualize the cost of a discount, even though it's only 2%, say, of the invoice value, when you discount that over the course of a year, it actually becomes a pretty expensive form of financing. And when you compare it to, say, what it costs to arrange an overdraft with your bank, the overdraft is probably going to be the cheaper option. Having said that, though, on the other hand, there's lots of small businesses out there that either don't have the security or they've reached the limit of their funding lines, and in fact, discounting might be another option, or the only option, to get money in the door quicker. And actually, I'm just thinking there is a member of your alumni that's looking to innovate in this space, Relay. They're doing some really interesting work. Michael. But look, in terms of Xero's invoicing features, we are working on building prompt payment discount functionality into our invoices. That's a work in progress at the moment.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. Great. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate your time. Very valuable information, which is cool. And I know all of our small, medium-sized businesses, under the Icehouse network will be tuning in and getting some gold from this. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.